Despite the superimposition of the consequences of the pandemic and the war, some effects of Brexit are clearly recognizable, though. While the UK remains strong on foreign and security policy, the economy, the political system, and the cohesion of the country have suffered dearly. A customs border now separates the EU from the UK, and businesses must comply with customs formalities such as customs inspections, customs declarations, rules of origin, and restrictions. Instead of an intra-Community delivery, a customs declaration must be submitted and proof of export required to document a VAT-exempt export delivery now. That's because in 2016 the people of the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union, at least the majority of the voters on that day. And Brexit was completed on January 31st in 2020, and trade relations between Great Britain and the EU are to be reorganized, and that happened already in a transitional phase by the end of 2020. So far, the cooperation between the automotive industry in the UK and the other EU countries has been very close and based on the common internal market, but also that has changed. I made a video on all the troubles with that. The expectations of all those new guidelines for trade policy were correspondingly high. Since the Brexit vote, there has been an uncertainty that has gripped not only the automotive industry, but the entire British economy. There has been a clear downward trend for several years, albeit from a high starting level. And so far, this has sometimes been cushioned without having to reduce capacities. But among other things, the uncertainty has led to investment decisions not being made or being postponed indefinitely. Last but not least, the Brexit process has divided the British population as a whole. Despite the tight referendum result, the Brexiteers have increasingly settled on the most extreme form of Brexit over the course of the negotiation process, instead of looking for a compromise solution. The polarization of the public debate has also increased at times. For example, constitutional judges who allowed lawsuits against the government because of the lack of parliamentary participation were defamed on front pages as enemies of the people when in the high phase. And at the same time in the UK, attitudes towards Brexit for or against have become a crucial part of political identity, with great consistency and at times even greater than support for a political party. I'm just saying red wall. Polls have regularly asked for attitudes toward the referendum decision since 2016, and the results show a high correlation with responses to questions on immigration, identity, and equal opportunities. And to date, there has been no acceptance of Brexit. More people are saying it's a mistake. Even heavier and potentially more serious are the political consequences of Brexit for the cohesion of the United Kingdom. And this has already been strained before. On the one hand, by the Scottish independence referendum in 2014, which narrowly ended in favour of remaining in the kingdom. On the other hand, by the peace process in Northern Ireland, that is still stalling. The Brexit process has deepened the cracks, especially since the Brexit referendum in Northern Ireland, with 55.8% and Scotland with 62%, voted against leaving the EU. In Scotland, the ruling Scottish National Party still advocated a soft Brexit and then a return to the EU. And in their view, Scotland was taken out of the EU against their own will, and in their point of view, a hard Brexit was imposed. The Scottish Parliament, like the regional parliaments of Wales and Northern Ireland, voted against both the Brexit withdrawal agreement in the form negotiated by Johnson and the trade and cooperation agreement with the EU. Contrary to usual convention, however, the British Parliament ignored these votes and passed both treaties anyway. And from the SNP's point of view, Brexit also justified a new independence referendum. They are still fighting for that. However, as the Supreme Court confirmed again in 2022, such a move can only be scheduled with the consent of the British government. All conservative governments have rejected this in recent years with reference to the 2014 referendum. But surveys in Scotland have shown growth since Brexit, and it's kind of at 50-50 at the moment. It's quite a tight race. And in Northern Ireland, the situation is more complex. Although a majority of the population there also spoke out against Brexit, the majority of unionists, that means those who want to remain part of the United Kingdom, voted in favor of Brexit. In addition, Northern Ireland was a special case in the Brexit negotiations from the start, because both the British government and the EU pursued the goal of keeping open the land border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the Emerald Isle, which is important for the peace process. In the negotiations with the EU, Theresa May that time agreed to a special solution in which, at least until a better solution was negotiated, the EU customs union and large parts of the EU regulations should apply to the entire United Kingdom. However, the representatives of a hard Brexit rejected this. In order to be able to implement this, her successor Johnson negotiated a new version of the Northern Ireland Protocol, but in the end, Northern Ireland is still tied to the customs union and certain areas of the EU's internal market as part of the special solution, but not the rest of the UK. I think Scotland and Wales would have preferred Theresa May's one. Of necessity, therefore, physical checks had to be introduced between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, while the border between the Republic of Ireland and the North could remain open. The Northern Ireland Protocol has since been a lasting strain on the Northern Ireland peace process and British relations with the EU, especially thanks to the DUP. For unionists, it symbolizes a gradual departure from the United Kingdom, and the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party I call Don't Understand Politics, initially refused to implement it and has been refusing to return to the government of Northern Ireland first since April 22, without revising the protocol, and now since the election in May they are doing the same. And since then the government and parliament in Northern Ireland have been completely blocked. The Northern Ireland Protocol is also a thorn in the side of supporters of a hard Brexit in Great Britain, because it means that part of the kingdom is still bound by EU law and judgments of the European Court of Justice, the famous ECJ. The British government has therefore only partially implemented the protocol and in 2022 introduced legislation that would completely undermine it and thus break the exit agreement with the EU, because the Northern Ireland Protocol is part of it. At the end of February 23, however, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who took office in October 22, managed to reach an agreement with the EU with the so-called Windsor Framework, in which the latter made clear concessions to simplify the movement of goods between Northern Ireland and Great Britain in this case. But London accepted the principles of the protocol, including the validity of EU rules in Northern Ireland under scrutiny by the European Court of Justice. So the ECJ has still a say there. The EU and the British government also agreed on a veto option for new EU rules if they are rejected in Northern Ireland, the so-called Stormont break. The British government has also announced that it will withdraw the Northern Ireland Protocol bill. With this overall package, and in view of the already difficult political situation of the Conservatives, the protests within the Tories were minimal. However, the DUP is still open as to whether it will accept the result and return to the Northern Ireland government. They still haven't. And while the conflict between the EU and Great Britain has been, kinda diffused for the time being, the situation in Northern Ireland remains tense. However, it is unlikely that this could bring reunification with the Republic of Ireland closer, given the continued division of the Northern Irish population. A majority for this is currently not in sight, at least not a clear one. And so far, the effects of Brexit on the international position of the United Kingdom have been less serious. Here too, London under the Johnson government, contrary to what May had striven for, opted for a hard Brexit and a clear demarcation from the EU. The kingdom has rejected any form of structured cooperation with the EU in foreign and security policy and has withdrawn from all military and civilian EU operations although these are not only open to EU states in principle. Instead, under the motto Global Britain, they want to assert themselves as an independent international power that is more globally oriented but remains firmly anchored in the European security architecture. This is supported by the fact that they play a special role in foreign and security policy anyway. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, a nuclear power with the to-date highest defense spending among European NATO states and a member of the G7, it has the largest diplomatic network alongside Germany and France. Although London has left the constant exchange on foreign and security policy issues within the framework of the EU institutions as a result of Brexit, it has been able to further expand its bilateral relations. And two developments have attracted particular attention. On the one hand, the United Kingdom concluded a military alliance, the so-called AUKUS, together with the USA and Australia in September 2021. London and Washington pledged support for Canberra to develop and deploy nuclear submarines, displacing France, which previously had a treaty with Australia. In addition, an exchange on other topics such as cybersecurity was agreed. Above all, Great Britain wanted to signal that it is the United States' closest European partner in geostrategic competition, including in the Indo-Pacific. On the other hand, London has negotiated bilateral declarations on closer cooperation in foreign and security policy with a number of European countries, including Germany, Poland, the Baltic countries, and the Nordic EU countries. And last but not least, the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine and the United Kingdom's resolute support for Ukraine, especially in the beginning in comparison to Germany and France, have helped to underline its importance for the European security architecture. For example, Britain trained Ukrainian soldiers and supplied weapons even before the war began. And today it is one of Ukraine's biggest supporters in terms of arms sales after the United States and Germany. In addition, London has given Sweden and Finland a defense guarantee for the transition to NATO membership. In foreign and security policy, the United Kingdom has not lost any noticeable influence since Brexit. It is and remains an attractive security partner. Nonetheless, none of these successes is directly related to Brexit or was made possible by it in the first place, because the EU's foreign and security policy continues to be a primarily intergovernmental policy area in which all member states retain their right of veto and are free to act in other institutions. So Brexit was needed for this. And both AUKUS and bilateral cooperation in Europe, as well as support for Ukraine, would have been conceivable within the EU. Overall, the interim balance of Brexit is clear. Almost 60% of the British population now consider the exit from the EU to be a mistake. Detailed surveys show that the regret of Brexit is now so pronounced that the majority of the population in only 2 counties still considers the exit from the EU to be the right thing to do. Demographically, it is also noteworthy that rejection of Brexit is most pronounced among younger Britons. The longer it has been since Brexit, the greater the proportion of those who classify the exit as a mistake. And this has to do with 3 factors. First, the warnings that deliberate decoupling from the largest trading partner and the reintroduction of trade barriers will be accompanied by losses in investment and economic growth have been confirmed, even if Brexiteers deny that. Although the British economy has not experienced a major abrupt crash, the country is gradually becoming less competitive than its European neighbors, and the economy is also growing at a slower pace or in danger of contracting. And secondly, Brexit heralded one of the most politically turbulent phases in the modern history of the United Kingdom, in which the fact that Boris Johnson won the clear absolute majority only helped calm things down for a short period of time. And third, the supporters of Brexit have so far not been able to keep their big promises: a significant reduction in immigration, a strengthening of the British health system, and an independent, more competitive policy. Only in terms of foreign and security policy has Brexit not harmed the well-positioned country, but it has also not brought any recognizable advantages. Politically, however, the Brexiteers have prevailed in the medium term. In the case of the Tories, they continue to determine policy after several changes at the party leadership, while earlier Conservative voices for closer ties with the EU have been ousted from government and party leadership. The next new elections are scheduled for autumn 24 or the beginning of 25, but the opposition Labour Party has also accepted Brexit and publicly ruled out a return to the internal market, the customs union, or even the EU. Instead, they want to enable better trading conditions on the basis of the trade and cooperation agreement with the EU. But they have still not explained how they want to do this. This is another unicorn. In the medium term, the country will therefore remain on course for the hard Brexit defined by Johnson. However, it remains to be seen whether the next elections and the increasing rejection of Brexit, especially among the younger population, will enable a rapprochement with the EU in the long term. But as long as Starmer doesn't say how we want to reach a closer ties within the TCA without closer ties to the customs union and the internal market, because it doesn't work otherwise, that is where I am saying that Labour is using the same dishonest campaigning policy as the Tories did. Because you cannot have closer ties, you cannot have more benefits within the TCA without closer alignment to the EU. That is just a thing of impossibility. And they need to be honest. Of course, I know why they are doing this. They want to get back their former Labour voting Brexiteers in the red wall. And they want to have a lot of people that wouldn't vote for them if they would tell the truth. The Starmer says he wants to make Brexit work. Brexit will never work. They either will stay in the relations they have now with the TCA, because Brussels doesn't have to give away gifts. They will not give the British more without anything in return. And the only thing the EU would get in return and have something from it would be closer alignment. The EU would have no advantage of opening the internal market more for British services, but that's what the British need. And they will not get this without paying the price for it. And so Starmer is also very dishonest. And I said this when I was hitting on the Brexiteers and the Tories all the time. I'm running my channels based on facts, and I didn't let the Tories get away with their lies all the years, but I will also not let Labour get away if they are running their campaigns with lies and dishonesty. And if a lot of Labour voters have watched my channel in the past, because I was hitting on the Tories, I have to disappoint you. I will hit on Labour as much as I did hit on the Tories if they are running a campaign like this. Because that is as dishonest as the Tories were, and I know exactly why they are doing this, to win the election, but it's not less dishonest that way. Nevertheless, we can talk about this a bit more on Sunday, for example, because on Sunday at 6 p.m. CET, the restart of the Outside Views live streams finally happens. So if you have some questions for that, on the first version of the live stream, you can ask questions. There's a post on the community tab on my channel where you can leave questions. So you have time until Saturday to do so until today. And then I will have a look what my patrons wrote, what my members wrote, and what you wrote, the rest of the viewers wrote on that community tab. And then I will pick some questions for Sunday. And if you want to see something else right now, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.